Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cocktails and Rocktails with me, your most notorious groupie, Alice Rouse, author of this little book right here, Not So Little, Half the Story, 573 pages. Where you can get that and these other little ebooks, all my merchandise, down in that description, so go down like it's a back lounge in the 1980s. It was fun, but dirty. Speaking of dirty, we're not there yet. But you guys, I want to start with a big thank you for all the love, all the support, all the friendship, all having my back, everything you guys are trusting, the subscribers, my members, my Patreon, my lurkers, everybody, even the haters. Thank you. Thank you for helping, making this a great family here. You guys fucking rock. And speaking of rock and roll, we are going to get into a little something that kind of made me start thinking about, because of the new, and I use this term loosely, new movie coming out about Priscilla Presley. We are going to talk about the difference between Priscilla Presley with Elvis Presley and Myra Gail Lewis with Jerry Lee Lewis. Because, they were kind of going on at the same time, but yeah, there was a lot of kind of differences to their dynamics and their relationships and stuff. Not just family. Not going to say anything. And today we are going to have one of my favorite locals, Saltfire, right here. You guys, this is a dirty chai stout because I like it dirty and messy. So everybody, let's make a mess. Kick up your heels and let's have a little cocktails and rocktails, shall we? Ooh, did I spill some? There we go. Now, this is a really good coffee stout. Like I said, made by our locals. What's our percentage on here? This is going to be a fun day for me. It's at 8.7. So, all right, guys, kick up your feet. Let's have the cocktails and rocktails. Cheers, big ears. So good. Love the chai in there. Love the coffee. Not overwhelming. Not disgusting. So good. Okay, so let's get into this. Sorry, guys. Got to get my tablet. Ooh, whoops. Okay, so let's kind of start talking about, like I said, with the new movie, but Priscilla, which, come on, you guys. I'd rather see something, honestly, more about Myra Gail Lewis, because really all we have is Great Balls of Fire, which does kind of center around the Jerry Lee Lewis and Myra Gail Lewis relationship. So I kind of, because we've seen so many things of, Elvis, it's a new movie. I know nothing's new. Nothing's new. We've seen other movies based around Priscilla before. We've seen this. Now, I do love Sofia Coppola, so don't get me wrong. I love Lost in Translation, her Marie Antoinette movie. I think she's an amazing. So why she kind of had to dive backwards and do something that's been so done over and over and over again, I don't know. I would have rather her done something on Myra Gail, because like I said, Myra Gail, she has this book out right here, you guys. So that's been out for a while, but really, why is nobody paying attention to that like they are Priscilla? What's the difference? Is it because, we think of Elvis as the king of rock and roll, the pristine, the untouchable, whatever, but he wasn't. We're about to find out, for those of you who haven't read the Priscilla book or seen the upteen Priscilla and Elvis movie again. We're going to go through some stuff. But let's start with Myra Gail. Now, obviously, there's the second cousin twice removed thing, which I'm not even sure what that means. So, that was kind of a big thing. And Jerry Lee wasn't exactly divorced from his first wife when he got together with Myra Gail. So Jerry had gone to Memphis. He had gone to, was it Nashville first or Memphis first? I can't remember. But anyway, and this is stuff, there's a little stuff that I found on YouTube that's Myra Gail. She is still alive. She still looks fucking fabulous. She just does this little teeny thing. Her and Priscilla both look fabulous, but Priscilla looks fabulous because of Dr. Ray Ray. Myra looks fabulous just because she still does. Big difference there. So, but that's not what we're comparing. I think they're both beautiful women. I think they've both lived a very brave choice in life. And it was their choices. So, okay. So, Myra Gail and Jerry Lee met when he went to stay at his cousin's house, who is also one of his band members, and he wasn't really that big of a guy yet, but he came into the house and needed a place to stay. They were gigging. They were making some money. They were just this close to Jerry Lee Lewis just exploding. And Myra Gail says that within 15 minutes of him coming into that house, he was playing the piano. He got his rock star on, and she was just like mesmerized, just completely. And as women are when they see musicians in the raw, in the wild, not on the stage. And like I said, Jerry Lee was just rising up about the time. So they met, and she said, well, it kind of started with him taking me out to ice cream, and he would goof off like a cousin does and giggle and stuff like that. Then it moved up to him kissing me, and then next thing you know, we were married at 13. Which, don't get me wrong, I'm not judging anybody. I was 14 when I met my first rock star, but it was a conscious decision that I made to jump the gun, so to speak. Well, to jump on David Lee Roth, let's face it. So, I'm not judging anybody for the age. Would I wait till I was a few years older? Yeah, I probably would. But I definitely wouldn't want to marry anybody at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I didn't want to marry anybody before the age of 30, for fuck's sake. I thought that was young. So, Myra and Jerry Lee, like I said, met. And then next thing you know, it was in 1957 that when she was 13 and he was 22. So there's a 9-year age difference, which after the age of 21, 22, 9 years isn't that big of a deal. But when you're in your teenage years, you don't realize how big of a deal it is. Because, like James Hetfield's about 7, 8 years older. Vinnie Paul, well, I was older when I dated Vinnie Paul, and a lot of those rockers that I knew back then were 10, 15 years older than me. And like I said, you don't really realize just how quickly you have to grow up around someone that's that age. But when it comes to rock stars, not so much. So they were married in, hold on just a second. Got a text from Danny. Give me a second. I'll be back. Okay, so I'm back. Where was I? Okay, so yeah, you don't realize how big that was. So Myra Gail, and according to the movie Great Balls of Fire, he just picked her up from school, was driving, taking her out for ice cream. They had already been kissing. They had already been flirting. They had already been kind of sneaking around under people's noses. So he picked her up from school, was like, hey, let's do this. Let's get married. And at 13, she was kind of freaked out, but she knew she had wanted to be a mother, because in that day and age, you were constantly told that you're a mother, this is what your purpose in life is. So at 13, that's all that's on your mind. You're not thinking about your independence, your career, and everything, So she just went up and married him. They hid it for a while, and then mom and dad found out, kicked them both out. Oh no, you want to play grown up? Go play grown up. You're going to go play grown up. So that was kind of the tough love. As compared, now this was going on while Elvis, because they were married in 1957, I believe. Sorry, I'm looking down. 1957. Now, Elvis met Priscilla in 1959. So, this was already going on. This is already happening. This was after, I believe, he had gone to the UK, where it was discovered that not only was she his cousin, twice removed, second cousin twice removed, like I said, whatever the fuck that means, but she was also 13 years old. So Elvis goes to Germany in the military, meets Priscilla about 1959. She's in the 9th grade. She's 14. Well, at least Elvis waited an extra year, So anyway, like I said, I'm not judging. I have no room to judge because I was young when I was hanging out backstage. And when I first started hanging out backstage, and you don't really realize because you feel so grown up and sophisticated. And so Elvis is in the army. Priscilla comes over one night to this house, meets Elvis. She keeps going over there. He keeps winning if you ask me, Elvis was a little more predatory about things. As to where Jerry Lee Lewis, he was just balls out, so to speak. He was just like, yeah, they hit it because, couple reasons, because Jerry wasn't exactly divorced yet, and because she was 13. Now, if she was 16, I think the parents would have been okay with it, but at 13, no mother wants her kid growing up too fast. Now, when Elvis met Priscilla was just fascinated. Like, that was just it. That was everything. She said all she saw was Elvis. She just wanted to be a part of his world and to please him and to just do everything that he wanted to get done and, just to be there and be the woman that he dreamt about. But, and Elvis actually said, it's well known that Elvis, he liked that about Priscilla, that she was so young that he could mold her. And Jerry did kind of mold Myra Gail after they were married, but Myra Gail was always independent. She was always out in the public as Jerry's wife. He never hid her away. She was always, so I think that empowered Myra Gail a little bit more to be more outspoken, to be more brazen, to be more independent in her own being, as to where Priscilla was, a precious little thing hidden, but very well known around the entertainment world that she existed. So he meets her, goes back around, I think they met about 1959. And then he went back around 1960, 61 to the United States. They kept in touch. She went over to visit him. Priscilla would be on these long night phone calls all night long, just her grades falling at school. She was just stubborn and battled with her parents. She just was stubborn. Fuck you. This is what's happening. She goes over to visit him with her father, I believe. Everything seemed cool. They were in their own rooms. Elvis was the model perfect gentleman as he was publicly, but we know it's not who he was. And, neither was Jerry Lee Lewis. So I'm not saying neither here nor there. But like I said, I think Elvis was a little bit more predatory because he wanted her. He molded her. Like the second she moved over there to go to school, which was some academy and was doing a little modeling on the side, did she really get that great of an education? No, I don't think she did. And I think that was intentional on Elvis's behalf because, if you give somebody the proper education, then they're not going to just believe everything you say and do what you're not going to be moldable. You're going to be too independent. So, and I think Myra says that Jerry started telling her once they were married, this is how you think, this is how you dress, this is how you are. But like I said, Jerry never hid her away. Myra Gail was out there. There are tons of pictures of Myra Gail and Jerry at the time. As to where Elvis knew what happened with Jerry Lee Lewis and was like, fuck that, that's not happening to me, even though I'm doing the same thing. So I think Priscilla was a little bit more conditioned and manipulated into who she was, from the black hair to the heavy eyeliner to just over the top everything, and they got married. Let me see, when did they get married? I believe, let me go down here. Yeah, the singer liked that Priscilla was young and inexperienced. Elvis saw a resemblance between Priscilla and his recently deceased mother, Gladys, whose death had hit the singer hard. He also told his friend Rex Manfield that Priscilla was young enough that I can train her any way I want. Well, that's not fucked up and fucking R. Kelly at all, is it? So Elvis was basically doing what R. Kelly's been convicted and in jail of right now. Harboring this young girl, conditioning her, telling her where she could go, what she could do. But yet here we are glorifying it with another movie. Thinking we're empowering Priscilla when in reality, she made her choice to be there and she made her choice to do what Elvis said. But Was it really fully her choice? I don't think it was. Because once Priscilla started making her own choices after they were married, she didn't even have a choice in her wedding date, which was May 1st of 19... So it's like Elvis and Priscilla reconnected 2 years after he was discharged, which no. Let's face it, in 1960, he finished his enlistment, but they never really disconnected. So he kind of treated her as a living doll. Sorry, I'm reading this from these articles. And they didn't have sex until their wedding night. You know, they did other stuff like they did over the clothes and maybe a little touchy here and there. But he didn't need to because Elvis, as we know, was getting it from Aunt Margaret, from Melody, from Sybil Shepherd, from all kinds of women left and right. Elvis was getting it where he needed it. So he could have his Madonna at home and the whores on the road. So, and like I said, I don't think either Myra or Priscilla got a choice in their wedding date because, like I said, Jerry Lee Lewis just sort of picked Myra up and was after school was like, hey, we're getting married. So they found a preacher to marry him at a quick little place. They got married. And I love how they portray it in Great Balls of Fire because they're both just, Myra Gail's just standing there like, holy fuck, I just got married. I just got married. And they were trying to sneak around as to what Priscilla, they were like, hey, getting on a plane. We're going to Vegas. Next thing you know, she's at the Aladdin Hotel. She's wearing whatever dress Elvis picked out for her. She's eating the cake. She's having the wedding that did she have any say? Neither of these women had any say in what their weddings were, which is really kind of sad and fucked up because especially when you're that young. Well, Priscilla was 21 because Elvis would not marry her before that. Probably because of what had gone on in the past with Jerry Lee Lewis. And plus he had the Colonel Parker who was protecting him, who was telling him what to say, what not to say, what to wear, what movies to do, you know. And I think Elvis needed some control over his own life. So that's how he did it, as to where Jerry Lee was just uncontrollable. Not Sam Shepard, from Sun Records, Sam was just like, yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis is uncontrollable, as to where Elvis had Colonel Parker controlling the fuck out of him. So, yeah, of course he's going to be doing things a little more under, but I think, like I said, I think Myra Gail was, you know, she was a little spitfire. Priscilla was more stubborn, but I think Myra was more of a spitfire and kind of out of control. And I think that's not out of control, but not completely taking Jerry Lee's shit. Now, they got divorced after 13 years of marriage, as to where Elvis and Priscilla it was like 9, I believe they were married, you know, and Priscilla just sort of started thinking her own way. She started branching out into the woman that she was. You know, because that happens in your 20s. You know, once you pass 21, you start becoming that more mature woman. You start realizing a lot more. And 13 years, I mean, Myra Gail was probably only about 26 when she divorced Jerry Lee, because she was done with it. I think she kind of figured it out quicker than Priscilla. I think Priscilla was taught to be a certain way. She was very stubborn. She wanted to be Elvis's perfect woman. And she thought maybe if she was that way, he wouldn't cheat on her. He wouldn't be doing all the stuff that he was doing that rock stars just do. But, you know, and outside of Surviving the Spark that Myra Gail wrote, we really don't know too much. And I haven't read that book. I'm getting ready to. I really want to read it because, like I said, I would like to know more about Myra's life. Because we've seen so much of Priscilla already. I think this Priscilla movie will be well made because, like I said, I just love Sofia Coppola. But I think it's another fucking subject that, come on, really? Are we not done talking about this? There's been 30 different fucking movies about Priscilla and Elvis, and at least 3 about herself. One Lifetime movie. But, you know, my thing was, everybody knew about Elvis and Priscilla. Everybody knew. They were photographed at the airport saying a long goodbye, and he was hugging her, and, She was there in tears crying, and everybody knew that she wasn't just one of the regular fans out at the airport having a conniption at seeing this big old rock and roll idol, right? And it was well known among the rock. Like I said, I think Colonel Parker did a lot better job as to where nobody gave Jerry Lee Lewis and Myra any, instruction. She just got off the plane, and a reporter asked Myra who she was, and she's like, I'm his wife. I'm 16. She was lying about her age, what she thought was, because that was the legal age in her state at the time that she could get married on her own. So in her mind, she was still doing the right thing, and she had no instruction, and she was definitely her own woman, and she definitely kind of gave Jerry Lee Lewis a run for his money sometimes, I think, as to where Priscilla was more the docile doormat type. And I don't mean that mean. I just mean that that's how Elvis conditioned her. Elvis totally R. Kelly'd her all the way. As to where Myra, she left a few times. She left, went back. Priscilla wasn't given that freedom. She was not given that independence, and she didn't have that spitfire that Myra did. She didn't have that same energy. And yeah, of course you're going to stay in it when you're 13, 14, 15, 16. Myra was out there. She was out there meeting the other rockers. She was out there on the road with Jerry Lee. She was out there being a part of his actual life out on the road and stuff, as to where Priscilla was not. And not that Myra was out there all the time. They had their daughter, Phoebe. She was probably about 16, I think, when they had Phoebe. So she was pretty young. I think Myra had to grow up a lot quicker because she was a mother at 16. As to where Priscilla was just moving in with Elvis and still being protected and pampered and sheltered and spoiled, and just kind of like the groupies in the road are kept away from home. You're in this whole illusion. Myra was smack dab in the middle of it, and she said she had a blast and she would not change a goddamn thing about it. And I don't think Priscilla would either. Now, the one thing I do say that Priscilla really did for Elvis, besides, being that perfect version of what Elvis wanted, which really wasn't for her, but I think, and she did it for her daughter too. Elvis's memory would not be what it is today if it wasn't for Priscilla. I really think, turned everything around as to where everybody else was sucking it dry and staining the memory, and Graceland probably would have been condemned and raised, gone, if it wasn't for her. So Priscilla really kind of had a quite intelligent business acclamation along the way, and she knew how to preserve Elvis, as to where I think Myra had a good business. She had a great experience. She was out there. She was not hidden. She was taken backstage and stuff. Priscilla was not, even after they were married. She had Lisa Marie 9 months to the day. Well, part of that Madonna whore complex is once they have the baby, it's like, oh no, this is too sacred to touch. She's destroyed. She's not going to be the same down there, yada, 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 whatever. Right? As to where Jerry Lee was just like, nope, she's even more fun. She's woman now, But there's a whole lot more that I think we could learn about Myra Gail Lewis, and not just during her marriage to Jerry Lee, because it did become abusive, just like Elvis's did, I think Myra and Priscilla really have that kind of dynamic in common. And I wonder if they've ever come face to face, because there's a conversation I would like to be a fly on the wall for. How they would compare and what the times were that, women, you don't just leave your man because he's beating you. You were taught to stay with someone despite, and I think they definitely were a product of their times, but they were also a product of being fascinated by the rock star and being not a bit delusional about reality. I think Myra had more grasp on reality. She was like, oh, I know what's going on, just like Priscilla did, but Priscilla was more demure about it and left it alone, as to where Myra would get into knockdown, drag out fuck yous with Jerry Lee about it. So I just really think I'm kind of team Myra. I'm not trying to choose teams on this, but I think had it been me in one of those positions back then, I would have been more of a Myra. Definitely would not have been a Priscilla. I like being pampered and coddled and protected and kept under wraps like a precious little Fabergé egg, right? But I also like being out there and being rough and tumble and playing with the boys and not just being in some gilded cage. And I think that's a big difference, another difference between Myra and Priscilla. So, yeah, Myra, like I said, she wrote a book as well, just like Priscilla's written books. And she found out that Jerry Lee passed away because her daughter called and was like, Dad died. And, it hurt Myra because she said something. She's like, when that was all happening, it wasn't just happening to Jerry Lee. It was happening to us both. And we were in it together. We fought it together and we stayed together. And I'm always and forever a part of that, which I get because when John passed away, it wasn't just happening to his family. It was happening to Cy. It was happening to me. It was happening to my family. It was happening to Cy's family. It was happening to John's friends. It was happening to the band. It was happening to the road crew. But Cy and I were in it together. So I get what Myra is saying on that as to where Priscilla, when all that was going on, she didn't have a voice. She didn't have a say. She might have tried to bring it up, but Elvis was just like, don't mind you. Shut up. How dare you? And I think he kind of had her manipulated into being that more docile, that as she grew up, she definitely became more empowered. She definitely was like, nope, we're done. We're done. And I think I think she was the only person that really kind of did that to Elvis, that was like, no, I'm divorcing you. And she cheated on Elvis too, which I think threw Elvis in a loop. As to where Myra didn't cheat on him, I don't think so. Like I said, I'm going to have to read Myra's book. So, and they're cheating on each other is neither here nor there. Do unto others as you would have done to yourself. And we know Jerry Lee and Elvis were definitely doing unto them. So, but I think Myra really kind of saw it as more, she was kind of more in the reality of the wife. And like she said, it was happening to them both. Both of them were being dragged through the mud. Both of them were being hurt. Their marriage was being put in question. And she was a young girl having to deal with all this whole aspect of the grown-up problem, as to where Priscilla was more protected and pampered and in that gilded cage. As to where Myra was more kind of in the Southern drag race, so to speak. She was dealing with it and dealing with these fights and talking back to Jerry and, showing that she was his equal. I think Priscilla showed that she was his equal, but a little too late. And I really think she stepped into her own after Elvis passed away, and she wasn't under that thumbnail of Elvis anymore. And I think she really kind of blossom into the woman that she is now, which is a wonderful woman, and she's quite an astute businesswoman. Like I said, if it wasn't for her, Lisa Marie would not have had the legacy that she did, So there you guys go. Like I said, I'm kind of more on Team Myra because I do want to know more about Myra's life. I'm going to be reading the book, but you know what? I'm not going to pay to go see Priscilla. I'll wait till it's free somewhere to watch it. Even though I love Sofia Coppola, but I would definitely pay the full $14.99 Amazon rental price for Myra's movie, because I think it would be an excellent movie. I think it would be fantastic. But you guys tell me your thoughts down there and tell me things that I missed, Let me know. Go down in the comments. Tell me what you think. If Myra was, because I don't think one's better than the other. I think they were both in different circumstances, but I think their personalities differed very much. Like I said, Priscilla was more stubborn about what she wanted with Elvis, and she kind of bullied her parents into it, as to where Myra was just like, okay, kind of going with the flow, and didn't really know what to say when Jerry's like, let's go get married. But she wanted to be that wife. She wanted to, and so did Priscilla, because that's what women were told they were going to be at that time. So that prepubescent fantasy of marriage was more for Priscilla than it was for Myra. I think Myra figured it out real quick. As to Priscilla, figured it out 9 months to the day, probably about 3 months. Elvis probably didn't touch her much after that. And I'm pretty sure she said in her book that Elvis, once they found out she was pregnant, didn't lay a hand on her. Jerry's just like, give me some of that. And Myra's like, woohoo, yeah, let's do it. But all right, you guys, tell me who you would want to see more. Who you think was probably more empowered during their marriages, not after, because I think they were both very empowered by the time they got out of their marriages. Priscilla was a little bit younger, a couple years to Myra, but things were happening in a pretty close succession with them. And I think what it came down to, the only reason that, Jerry Lee and Myra Gail went through what they did is because, number one, Elvis had learned from what happened with Jerry Lee, and they were always at odds musically. And he also had Colonel Parker protecting his ass, not Jerry Lee. And Jerry Lee wasn't ashamed of, he didn't see any shame in what he was doing, so he just blew everything out there in the open, dealt with it, didn't get mad at his wife, as to where I think Priscilla wasn't allowed to do interviews or talk. Even at their wedding, she really didn't say much, and she was probably instructed what to say. Myra never was. She was just like, yep, this is me. But all right, guys, thank you to everybody who got to the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed today's kind of comparison, because it is kind of a saint versus sinners. And that's the name of today's episode, because why was Elvis Presley painted the saint as to where Jerry Lee Lewis was the sinner? And what it comes down to is, like I said, Colonel Parker. He controlled everything Elvis did. And I think that's one of the reasons Elvis had to control the women in his life, because it wasn't just Priscilla, but I think that's one of the reasons he had to control her, because that's the only control he found in his life. He didn't have control of everything else. Colonel Parker was his puppeteer. Jerry Lee Lewis, everybody knew he couldn't be controlled. He just had to be, PR just had to clean up the mess behind him, basically. And it did cost Jerry Lee Lewis his career, but everybody knew when Elvis married Priscilla at 21, after 6, 7 years of being together, just made him, he's such a chaste man marrying Priscilla. So saint versus sinner. Who's the saint? Who's the sinner? Is it Priscilla? And are the ladies saints or sinners? All right, tell me what you guys think down in that description. And while you're going down there, for you lurkers, hit that subscribe button. Everybody hit that share. We are growing beautifully. So let's get this out there, get bigger. Let's get something original out into the world. Because as I said at the beginning of this, nothing original about Priscilla's story. Lots of original about Myra. I'm more of a Myra kind of girl. All right. So everybody go down, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, hit the share, hit my bells. Oops, I just said that, but And we will see you next time on Cocktails and Rocktails. Cheers, big ears.